In today's video, I want to talk a little bit about depression, mainly because I think there's somewhat of a social stigma around it. It's something a lot of people don't want to talk about or feel shameful about, but that's the point of this video. I want to just kind of go through the basics, explain some things that are misconceptions, maybe some myths about depression, go through causes and different treatment options. I think treatment's one of the most important things. So we will go through natural approaches, medication, and what's up and coming with different types of treatments available. A lot of this video was inspired by Janssen Pharmaceuticals because I've been keeping up to date with all of their new data and things they're researching, and they're finding some really great treatment options for people who don't respond to regular antidepressants or natural approaches. So we will get into that later on in the video, but there's some really cool stuff that's going to be available to anyone who is suffering. First, let's just go through what depression actually is. I think that there's a misconception that all depression is a very severe case of it, and that's not always true. There's many forms of depression. It can range from anything to postpartum depression, something traumatic going on in your life. It can be seasonal depression, which I've personally experienced when I was in college in Boston. I swear my mood was affected, and I would literally have the brightest lights in my room all the time, like lamps, and my roommates would come in and be like, don't you ever want like dim lighting? And no, because it depressed me because it was always like so dark outside. So a little tangent, but there's so many different forms of depression. You can get into bipolar depression, but they're actually trying to recategorize what they call it and say depressions because there's so many different categories. Another thing to note is that about 300 million people in the world suffer from depression, and it's the biggest cause of disability. So we'll get into different things it can cause, but it can cause physical pain. It can alter like literally the function of your brain and just the structure of your brain even. So a lot of people suffer from it, and the reason it's the biggest cause of disability is because it's very much untreated. And this could be for so many different reasons. Maybe you don't realize that when you're feeling a little down with the weather that is one form of depression and there are different things you can do for it. Or maybe there's a social stigma of not wanting to admit it to your significant other, or your family, your friends. So I'm hoping that this video will kind of help inspire or connect with someone who might be experiencing it or knows someone that's going through it, and they can get the treatment they want, because I keep giving teasers to the end of the video, but we can see that treatment can literally reverse the damage that's happened or the changes in function of the brain. So it's really cool to see that even though it can cause maybe inflammation in some areas, that can go away after you are treated. So that's inspiring, just a little inspiring teaser for the rest of the video. So causes of depression, there's no like significant, like this is the cause, that there's different things that are like highly associated with it. There's family history, a few things. If you have someone in your family that suffers from depression, you're more likely to get it. Genetic tests have actually shown that some people who have depression have a specific mutation in their brain, whereas people who have another kind of mutation are actually more resilient to depression. So there's a lot of cool findings there. Another thing is that children are actually at the same risk when they are children, but once women hit puberty, they're at higher risk. Women are much more vulnerable to depression during and after pregnancy. So this alone just shows that hormones can play a huge role. I mean, we know that estrogen and progesterone play a huge role in brain function and happiness, and these are things that will be fluctuating during something like pregnancy, puberty. So that's, there's some findings there. So these are just things that could increase your risk. This is actually another reason Janssen inspired this video for me, because they have this program called the Disease Interception Accelerator program, which basically studies the root causes of disease states, like why they're happening. They look at biomarkers. So if we're able to do this research, which I think is so important, we can figure out what's causing it and then help women before this actually happens, before it affects them and their babies. And this is something like when a woman is pregnant, I mean, the energy that can affect the baby, this is something we all know. Like, you have to make sure you're not too stressed or anxious, because all of that can transfer over to your baby. So finding out the root cause and then trying to treat it before it happens is great. So what depression can lead to is actually, I think, the most concerning, and it's just so true. Like, it can lead to physical changes in your brain and your body. They've done surveys on adults with depression, and like nearly half of them have chronic pain. It's not even just like a little bit of pain, it's chronic pain. I know for me, I've talked about this in some of my videos before, that when I feel really distraught or stressed, I literally will get like an aching pain in my shoulder, and it's immediate, and it's so crazy to just think of what your mind can do to your energy in your body. So if you have depression that's ongoing, you can imagine this is just kind of like a dull chronic pain, which then can, like, let's say, lead to impacting the quality of your life. Maybe you're not able to go out and do as many activities, and this is just something that can lead from one thing to another. Another really common thing that depression can lead to is sleep disturbances, fatigue. If you're having trouble sleeping, you're going to be fatigued during the daytime, and then this could lead to even more depression. So this can actually end up being a little bit of a cycle here. Sleep is so important for so many areas of our health, so it's just another reason why it's so important to make sure you're treated. So with that, let's go into different treatment options for depression. So when it comes to treating really anything, I love to start with the most natural approach possible. I'm sure you've seen that in a lot of my videos, but I do want to make a really important point here that sometimes if a situation is severe, whatever disease state that is or whatever case you're in, sometimes it's really important to interject with medicine first, get you at baseline, and then also supplement with the natural approaches. I think there's always room for lifestyle modifications, but I don't think that it's always appropriate for everyone, and it won't always work for everyone. I have noticed that, with our millennial generation, we love natural, holistic, which is amazing, but sometimes that leaves a little bit of room for maybe judgment or criticism to people who aren't using the natural approach, and I never want to make anyone feel like that who might need to go to the medication route. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you need, and that's something that you and your healthcare provider could decide on. I think with depression, if it's something that's maybe caused from a circumstantial event in your life, like a traumatic event, or maybe it's seasonal depression, those could be cases where the natural approach is better to start with. But if it's something a little bit more severe, then I think that sometimes medication is definitely the answer. But let's go through the natural approaches. One of them that's really just studied research is exercise. This is not just a random suggestion, especially aerobic exercise. It increases endorphins. I can tell you from personal experience that when I start exercising, I immediately feel happier. I mean, it kicks in within maybe 10 minutes. Don't get me wrong, I'm exhausted. Sometimes I'm annoyed and hate it and want it to be over, but there's this internal good feeling and happiness. So that's just tried and true. And it's so good for you anyway. It's just one of those things you should always do. There's also a huge relationship between the brain and the gut. And I actually listened to an amazing podcast on Goop that I can link below here if you guys want to hear that. But eating healthy and eating clean food is very much linked to mood changes. And when you're eating processed, just overly processed bad foods that are going to drag you down, it can absolutely affect your mood. Food presentation is also huge. So when you see alive, fresh, raw vegetables and fruit and clean food that's even presented beautifully. I've talked about arranging food nicely in mason jars. They're $1. You can put your veggies or fruit in there. When it looks more beautiful and presentable, you're more likely to eat it, and this is actually going to impact your mood. So diet is very important here. Meditation is also huge. Meditation is another one of those that whether you're happy, depressed, whatever state you're in, everybody could benefit from meditation, and it actually improves your brain function. It actually releases stress from your body. So doing that and incorporating it into your life every day, which I try to do every day. There's definitely days I miss, but I really try to do it every day, and that's just so important. So I would look into meditation. And lastly, this is honestly a personal tip for me that I've seen in my own life and I'd love to share. Surrounding yourself with people who lift you up and positive people is so important. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily depressed in my early 20s, but I definitely had a lower energy. Some people would say maybe I vibrated at a lower frequency. I was always just, my general state was a little bit low. And I, once I got into my mid-20s, I started going to therapy and really wanted to just always better myself and learn. And I'm really a different person now. And one thing that I did that was huge was make sure I was always surrounding myself with positive people. Even some people in my family got to a problem where I would tell them, I was a little bit harsh about it, but I was you're too negative. I don't want to talk to you right now. And it worked though. And they ended up changing. But when you have that negative energy around you, it will really drag you down. And when you're around people who are go-getters and happy and look at the glass half full, I swear it will rub off on you, and you are who you surround yourself with. So you have to put yourself first. If people are dragging you down and worsening your depression, you need to switch the group of people that you're around. So those are the natural approaches. when it comes to medication, there are a lot of traditional antidepressants on the market. They're all different but similar. So they basically increase the amount of neurotransmitters available in your brain. So we will all have them, but they'll do something to alter how much is available to you to increase mood. Now there's different neurotransmitters. So some groups will work on certain ones like serotonin, dopamine, and there's different things they can do. But for the most part, it's the same mechanism. So a lot of people will respond to this. Sometimes it's short term, sometimes it's long term, totally depends on the person. I do think that they're overprescribed a bit, and I think that people don't try the natural route first, or sometimes it's also the doctors that just initially want to prescribe it without really going into what's going on in your life. So they can be very helpful. However, what's interesting is that about 30% of people still don't respond to these antidepressants, and that's a pretty large number. They're kind of categorized into treatment-resistant depression, but Janssen is actually working on doing research to find different treatments that work on different pathways of the brain, because, basically researchers are finding if none of these are working, maybe their depression is caused from something else that's going on. Maybe there's some kind of other imbalance. So I think that's so cool, and just research that we need. In general, medical research is so important because we have to keep finding solutions to issues, and we do studies and we find out what's going on, why isn't this working, and if we could tackle that 30%, I just think so much, it could bring so much positivity and help so many people that really need it. So that's really what's going on right now. We've got the natural approach, what's available on the market, and what's to come. So that's pretty cool. I think in general, just trying to get treated, really trying to address it and not ignoring it is so important for your own life and for your own happiness. Happiness is the most important thing, health and happiness. So it's something that I think everyone should make a huge priority. I know those are my biggest priorities in my life. And even if a lot of my time and effort goes towards that versus other things, I think when you don't have those two things, everything else is affected. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I really hope that it helps anyone out there watching this that might be experiencing depression or know someone with depression. And thank you, Johnson & Johnson, for partnering with me on this video, and also for the continued research you guys provide for so many different ailments and disease states, because without that research, we wouldn't get better and have solutions to the issues that keep coming up. So if you guys have any questions on the topic or want more information, please leave it below in the comments, and I will see you next time.